Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. We are going to give it another minute or two to let some additional people join, and then we're going to get started. If I could ask if you guys could raise your hand if the sound is coming over fine, then I'll know that we're in good shape to go. On the console, you should be able to raise your hand. Perfect. Thanks. Okay, so let me just give it 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we'll get started. Okay, so we're going to get started. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Michal Wachstock. I'm head of customer marketing here at Sisense, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, Best Practices for Driving User Adoption for BI. This is actually a topic very near and dear to my heart, and I would like to introduce Ifat Lev, who was a customer success manager. She'll introduce herself and explain what her role is now, but she was instrumental in building out this content and working with multitudes of customers, building out adoption plans, and helping customers get the most out of their BI. A few housekeeping items before we begin. The webinar will be recorded, so keep an eye out for that. It might take a day or two to get that to your inbox. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, and we'll get to them at the end of the webinar. You can feel free to send them over whenever they come to you. And I think that's all I've got. So Ifat, I leave it to you.
Thank you, Michal. Thank you, everyone. I'm very excited to be here today and to discuss my favorite topic, increasing user adoption. As Michal mentioned, I'm just going to say that I'm currently head of strategic customers at Sisense, and I had the privileges to lead the CSM team for several years. So we managed to collect many tips and best practices, and we would like to present them to you today. So let's start. Okay, so what will be the goal of this presentation today? I would like to be very practical today and focus on best practices and tips for driving and increasing user adoption. Specifically, we would like to give you the ability that by the end of this presentation to be able to build your own success plan in order to increase adoption after you will learn how to identify the challenges that you have in your organization. And we will give you some tools and tips how to overcome those challenges. I will also share some template or best practices on the success plan itself. So stay tuned until the end. Okay, let's start to discuss about BI project in general. When we look about when we look at BI project, we usually look at two main pillars. The first one would be the implementation part, how to build and create the BI solution. We see that as the foundation of the BI solution, and for that we have a complete BI methodology that you are welcome also to look at it in our website that helps you to follow best practices and methodologies of how to create a good BI solution. Assuming that's the phase that you already been through and it's behind you, the second phase would be what value and business insight you can gain from the BI solution. So discussing about adoption and users' acceptance and usage will come as a second pillar, as a second phase. And this is what we are going to focus on this presentation today. Let's start by understanding what a user adoption is, because there is a lot of definition around user adoption, And I choose three of them to share with you. The first one is we are talking about a mental acceptance. It means that it's something that we need to accept in our minds, in our heads. It's not come easily to us, and it's something that we need to adjust to. That's the first thing. The second definition talks about ongoing process or ongoing um, capability. It means that it never stops. There are always changes. Our organization constantly changing. There are new requirements all the time, and we need to adjust ourselves and make sure the adoption is an ongoing process and not a one-time thing. The third thing is basically, I already mentioned it, it's a process. So it's not something that just start and end with with a milestone of 2 hours of 1 week or a certain defined timeline. It's a process that is an ongoing one and also habitual one. So if you will not put it as part of your day-to-day activities, you will not be able to increase adoption and drive adoption in a constant way. You might be able to do it on a one-time thing, but not as a practice or not as a process that will be kept for a long time. So what I want you to take from these definitions: habitual, ongoing, process, mental change. Let's see, what does it mean? So when we talk about a successful BI project, we usually talk about three main entities in the organization. We talk about the management, we talk about the BI core team, which I guess most of the audience here is from this team here today, and we talk about the business end users. I'm going to touch each one of those entities, but I will focus mainly on the business end users. But let's start with the management first. The management is the key to the culture of the organization. Sometimes we have a challenge that we don't have a data-driven culture company. So, if you don't have a defined KPIs, if you don't have a clear targets, it's really difficult to build a BI implementation solution, and it's even more difficult to adopt it because everyone is looking at different measure and there is not a clear KPI. So that will be one of the main challenges that we sometimes have when we talk about lacking of in adoption, the ability to create data-driven culture. And I will touch that challenge in a minute. The second challenge that we usually see, and that's usually the most common challenge, it's regarding the meeting requirements and providing value, which means that probably the initial BI solution that we created and built probably doesn't give enough value to the users, and that's the main reason they are not using it. But my main presentation will talk about the business end users, which usually when we talk about challenges in that area, we talk about a lack of end users buy-in because they have a trust issues with the data. They don't confident the data. They don't trust the solution, the software. They fear of change, and sometimes they are also lacking knowledge. So I'm going to address each one of those elements thoroughly in this presentation. So let's start with creating a data-driven culture. I just want to say one thing before I drill into the details. The idea here is that you will try to identify within your organization what is the challenges that you are facing. Once you have that identified, you will be able to address that and to build a plan around that in order to mitigate it or to overcome that. So I will present different challenges and then we will talk about how to overcome that. So creating a data-driven culture. That sometimes can be really scary because when you are part of a BI team of a company that doesn't have a data-driven culture, it can be very scary to think, okay, now I'm going to create the KPIs for the organization, how I'm going to do this culture change. So we are saying first of all, start small. You don't need to do a change in the entire culture, in the entire company DNA. You just need to pick a department or pick an area, business area, where you know or that they are interested or that you feel that they do work with the specific KPIs, and start with them, and then expand gradually. The second advice is to have a clear KPIs for each department. So once you define this department, make sure the KPIs are clear, and you agree on what you want to measure. The third part is by far the most important thing for trust and confidence, the fact that we have single source of truth. In many cases, I realized that when we worked with different departments in the organization, each one of them were looking at the same KPIs, supposedly, but the results were different. So we really need to make sure as a BI team that we are providing a single source of truth, and if for that we need to do some validations and some tests and some alignment with the different departments, it's really important that we will invest time to do that. So, okay, we talk about what can be done in order to make a company a data-driven culture, or what are at least the first steps, and then let's talk about how we should do that. So the first tip is to enforce the dashboard usage by the management. How do we do that? The management needs to use the dashboards in their day-to-day activities. So for example, if a manager sits with an employee and they go over the targets or the task or their activities, they should do that using the dashboard. So when we come to create the dashboards themselves, let's look at those day-to-day meetings, day-to-day activities, and make sure they are reflected in the dashboards. This way, the manager and the employee will go over the information before the meeting, and by nature will increase adoption because they will use it constantly. If they need to explain their managers what they did or what are the challenges or why the results are as they are. The second thing is go beyond the dashboard. We are saying you don't necessarily need to use Sisense application or Sisense dashboard. You can also embed some of the widgets or the dashboards into your day-to-day applications. So for example, your CRM system, ERP, ticketing system, and so forth. I can give you an example from the CSM team where we are using Gainsight on top of Salesforce, and we manage the project, we manage the accounts, the customers within this platform. What we did is we embedded Sisense dashboard, usage dashboard. So every time we have a meeting with a customer, we can look at a dashboard from the Gainsight, from the Salesforce, and we are able to see all the information, all the usage data that we need prior to the meeting. So that's really a very, very good way to increase adoption and make sure people will use the dashboards. The third tip is to embed interactive dashboards in PowerPoint presentation. We always use PowerPoint. We present, we share, we do webinars. It's our day-to-day tool. There is an ability also to embed interactive dashboards into the PowerPoint, so you will be able to present the dashboards, the result, in an interactive way. So you can drill, you can show filters. So it's not just to present a screenshot of the dashboard or report. It's actually to make it interactive. Everything that I'm mentioning also is in the website, so you can find how to do that, for example, with a PowerPoint. Okay, let's move to the second challenge, which is, from my perspective, is the most common challenge, but it's also I would say, the easiest to overcome. Meeting requirements and provide value. So to begin with, we think that the main reason that our end users are not using the dashboard is because they don't give them any value. They don't actually see what they want to see. They want to see other things, and they don't have any reason to use the dashboards. So what we are suggesting to do And by the way, I mentioned that we have a BI methodology that explains all the steps that I'm just presenting to you right now in a much more deep way. So I encourage you also to look into the BI methodology. But in a high level, we are saying that first of all, you need to identify the target audience and adjust your dashboard accordingly. Because the first reason for not using a dashboard is that it's not suits your role or what interests you. So if I'm a manager or if I'm an executive, I'm interested to see bottom line. I have targets, I have goals, I have numbers to achieve, and I want to see actual versus target. I want to see who is the problematic. I want to see red flags. I want to see really, really high level data. And of course, I need also the ability to drill down if I'm interested to see what's the reason. As opposed to individual contributors, for example, that his work is to solve tickets or to manage projects. In that case, he will need to see completely different topics and different level of granularity. So for a start, make sure you identify your target audience and adjust the dashboard according to this audience. Identify desired business end results. The very first rule of building KPIs or a dashboard is thinking of what is the action that you want to take upon this KPI. So if I'm looking at a dashboard, I want to envision what is the action that I want to take while looking at one of my KPIs. So, for example, if I'm talking about sales department, and I'm looking at target versus actual, and I'm looking at my salespeople and their results, what I want to take, the action item that I want to take from it is who are the weakest link and how I can improve their knowledge and their skills. So I will start by thinking what is the action. So the action is to make sure I'm providing the knowledge and the expertise to those salespeople that are lacking that, and from there I will define the KPI that measure that. So I need to see the results of the sales. I need to have a granularity of the salespeople. So that's the way it works. You think first about the business end result or the activity that you want to do, the action, and then you define the KPI. The third one is really a key point. Make sure to create dashboards that provide unique insights. So for example, if I can get the same information from Salesforce or from Zendesk or from any system that I'm already working with, why should I go to Sisense dashboards? I'm not getting any additional value from it. The value or the unique insight that I'm getting is when I'm meshing several data sources and I'm providing an information or insight that I cannot see anywhere else. So if you build a dashboard in advance in such a way that you will get those unique insights only in Sisense or only in your BI solution, you will promise yourself a higher adoption rate because people will have to go there to see this information. They will not find it anywhere. The fourth one is also really important, is create stickiness. Make sure people depend or rely on the information that is presented in the dashboard. If you will create such dashboard that they really need it in order to succeed in their jobs or to be successful, then by itself, by nature, you will drive adoption because they will have to use it. They rely on it. So that's a key rule. And the last rule is to look for quick wins and low-hanging fruits. So, for example, many people ask me all the time, okay, we have an onboarding process together with your BI consultant, and we need to choose one use case to do that together with them. What you suggest us to choose? And I'm always saying, don't choose the easiest dashboard or easiest KPI. Choose the one that is has significant, has high priority in the organization, One that is probably something you can do you can do together with a BI consultant, because you can use the skills and the capabilities of the BI consultant coming from Sisense, but make sure you have a quick win. So take something significant that by the end of the onboarding, you will already have a value that it's meaningful. So look for quick wins and low-hanging fruits. And the last one, which is probably something that if I want you to remember one thing from this deck, is this one, is the check yourself and adjust. We mentioned this is an ongoing process. You cannot rely on the fact that 3 months ago you did a requirement process and you got a requirement and that's it. No. Think about it even from sales perspective. The targets are changing. The commission plans is changing. You need to always check yourself, ask the users, the end users for feedback, and adjust all the time. Constant change, remember. And how do we do that? I mentioned our BI methodology, which is basically relying on three main phases. The first one is planning. You have a planning phase where you need to gather the requirements and you need to do a high-level design for the dashboards, how it will look like, and for the Elastic Cube. Then you start the execution part where you do the planning of the dashboard and the design of the Elastic Cube, the actual building of the Elastic Cube and the dashboards. And then there is the phase of the release and the track and adjust. The idea here that this is a process that repeats itself. Each time you have a new request or each time you have a new use case, you are starting to build the process in the same way. And I'll talk about it a bit later. Okay, so let's talk. Let's focus on the end users, which, as I mentioned, is the focus of my presentation. So first of all, let's see who are the end users. We are dividing them into two groups. The first group is the people that are using the dashboards. They can be, if it's an OEM company, they can be your customers if you embed the Sisense solution within your software, or it can be your employees, the people that are using the Sisense software internally in the organization. Whether it's this or that, you will always identify within those users the key business users. Let's try to understand who are they. The key business users will be passionate people about data and analytics and KPI. You want to choose an opinionated people that are a role model, an influencer in the organization, because they will influence others. And you want to make sure that they understand the business use case very well. So now that we understand who are the key business users, let's talk about when we need to identify them and then how we are going to involve them in the project, in the BI project. So first of all, we need to identify them from the very beginning. When we start to collect the requirements, we need to make sure our key end users are part of that and they are giving their blessing to the requirements. The second thing is don't look only for the key users that are passionate, but also look at the negative users that are causing a lot of noise in the organization. Those guys, and believe me, I'm telling you that from experience, they can be a big noise and they can influence the adoption. So we need to identify the negative users from the beginning. And usually, you might be surprised, but the negative people are the ones that care the most. They will not spend time to complain if they don't care about the system, if they don't care about the data that they are getting. So if you will be smart enough to identify them from the beginning and work with them on their requirements and work with them to make sure they will be happy, they will get what they need, then they will be your biggest advocates at the end. So that's a key tip. Once you identify them, how do we want to involve them? We want them to define the business requirements with us. We want to get a constant feedback from them. So I really recommend that you will have like a recurrent meeting with those key users, and that you will get the feedback in an ongoing way all the time. And important, not less important, is that we need to make sure that those key business users will be part of the user acceptance test, and we will sign off each dashboard release. So now that we have the end users, it's a good start. The key business user, it's a good start. Let's talk about what else can we do to increase adoption. First of all, we realize that in many companies, the employees or the people who are using the dashboard doesn't really know what exists, what dashboards exist in their company. So what we are saying for a start, keep an updated BI inventory in a place where everyone can approach. Make sure to have basic information like what is the dashboard name, what is the purpose of this dashboard, who is the audience that this dashboard aim to, what are the main KPIs. Today in Sisense software, the administrator have access to that and can see all the dashboards, but the other users can't. So try to make such a list so there will be a visibility. And why we need this visibility? For several reasons. First of all, sometimes people doesn't know what exists, and that's the reason they are not using it. And the second reason is because they might see another department that has a similar KPIs or similar targets to their, and they might take ideas, take example, ask to have the same dashboard also to themselves. So it's really by itself drives adoption, the knowing and the visibility. The second thing is many times when a user look at the dashboard, it doesn't understand the KPI, how you measure that, what is the formula behind it. Remember, I talked about trust and confidence in the data. If we will not understand how the formula is calculated, and again, it doesn't fit to all users, but for some users that are really technical and interested in the details, they need to know how you calculate the formula. And for those users, we should probably keep that information in an accessible place. So for example, when we build a widget, we can write in the description, what is the main measure, how do we measure it, maybe put the formula if it makes sense. Just give a bit more information about the KPI itself. And the second part of it is at least provide to the end users the business rules of what they are looking at. So for example, if you're looking at an indicator that has traffic light, what does the color mean? What does it mean red? What does it mean yellow? When should I be worried? So try to address those business rules within the widget so people will be more involved, will understand what they are looking at. And also, if you have a roadmap, if you know that you're going to release few dashboards in the future, like in the next quarter, in the next month, also document that and publish that so people will know what to expect. The next one is probably the most important tip, this one and the one after it, talks about visibility and training. Because eventually we mentioned that the challenge can be trust, which we talked about right now, how to overcome the trust by explaining the KPIs and the measurement. But also some of the users are not using the dashboard because they don't know how to use it. And for that, we are suggesting several best practices. So the first one, we have in our LMS, Learning Management System, a session that provides you all the materials that you need in order to train your employees how to use Sisense and how to introduce new dashboard. So I really encourage you to look at this and see how you can follow those instructions. New employees. Very important to provide introduction and training to new employees. So from the very beginning, once they join the company, and if they need to use the dashboard, they will know how to do that. The third one is to build a dedicated training for different departments. We are launching a dashboard. We need to make sure we are explaining the people how to use it. There are different ways to do that, by a webinar, by one, face-to-face, whatever is a remote session, whatever is convenient to you. Make sure that once you did all this hard work of creating the dashboard, you also train on them and what they can gain from them, how they can operate them. The next one is one that I really like. In most of the organizations, especially in the big ones, you have your own learning management system. We are providing you a way to insert the Sisense training course, the Sisense Masters training courses into your corporate learning management system. So we basically give you the kit and you can put it in your own LMS system, and that can be part of the onboarding process that you have in your organization. Of course, in addition, we encourage you to attend the Sisense Masters training events, which we do, which we arrange as Sisense, to learn about new features, to learn about advanced adoption, advanced implementation, adoption, and other topics. Conduct one-on-one training sessions with key business users. Usually that will be very relevant for executives. You want to make sure an executive or a manager of a department will use the dashboards and will be a role model for his team. Make sure to conduct a one-on-one training. Invest in that. It's important. Not less important is also to train about new features, because for every release that we provide, we also provide new features that can be very interesting for the viewers, for the end users. So if we have such, for example, the Pulse or the mobile, those you should share with your end users so they can gain more from what you already have. So that was the training, and now I want to talk about the how to market your success internally. Because training is one thing, but publish and market it, it's another story. So one of the methods that we recommend is to use newsletters once every quarter, once every period of time. You can address new dashboards, success stories, new features, anything that you think that around BI can interest other people. This by itself will increase people to go into the system and use it more. Here you can see an example of a newsletter that we at Sisense provide to our customers, just as an example. The second thing is promote everything you can that relates to the BI in your internal platforms like Facebook, Slack, Wiki, success stories, return on investment that you did using the dashboard, and so forth. So here's an example again for Sisense. We have a very active Facebook. People are addressing success stories there. There you see the Sisense Startup Program information here, and our CEO responding to that below. So this is an example. Face-to-face engagement. Make sure to have events, roundtables, road shows, whatever you can do, and even you can use an existing event and share a session on what's new with your dashboards within those existing events. Drive excitement. This is one I really like. We at Sisense, and you can see here an example from our offices, and for those of you who look really carefully, they can see also the sea view behind. So at Sisense, we have big screens where we present our targets, our KPIs per department. So this is, for example, the CSM department, where you can see behind who are the most successful, achieving targets, and so forth. That's by itself drive a lot of excitement, and people are very competitive, so they are looking at it and trying to do whatever they can in order to improve and be successful. Another way to market the success, or at least to get the right feedback, is to use internal surveys. If you have a big number of users, hundreds, you can use this method of creating a survey and asking your users, what is the most widget you are using, or what works for you, what you're still missing, how often do you use the dashboard. Some of the data can be already achieved using our usage tool, which I'm going to present in a minute. But you can also ask questions about what is missing and questions that you cannot get from the usage tool. So use that method as well. Now let's talk about another element in the organization that is also important. Imagine someone already decided to go into the dashboard, spend some time to log in and open, and then he cannot access. Or then he enters, but he doesn't understand the widget or the KPI, or it doesn't make sense to him, the number that he see. We need to make sure we have some kind of internal help desk in the organization that will be able to support the end users with those questions. Whether it is a technical issue, which means, okay, I can't log in, I have a problem to see the dashboard. That's from one angle. And from the other angle, I want to have a mechanism or a place where I can send requirements, new requirements for BI. So create some kind of a form to collect those new requirements. That this can be for new use case or new dashboard or even for existing dashboard. I wish I had another widget that would do this or that. So that's also something important to have as a process. And of course, to support basic analytical functionalities. So how do I operate the dashboard? How do I filter, drill, explain me the result that I see here that it doesn't make sense to me? So all this needs to be addressed to some kind of a help desk, or it can be the BI team, but the users need to know who they need to address those requests or who to get the support from. So don't forget to publish that as well. Sorry. So after we mention few tips and best practices, we also want to share with you some of the adoption features that we have within the tool, within Sisense software, which can really help you increase adoption. The first one will be the Sisense Pulse. The Pulse actually allows you to build your own dashboard, one dashboard that is taking the KPIs from each of your widgets and put the most important KPIs for you in one page. Have a notification with the business logic behind it. So if you adjust the dashboard to your need and create just the one that you really want to use, that by itself will increase adoption because you will use it all the time because that's the important KPIs for you. The second feature is the mobile Sisense application. We want to take the data with us everywhere. Everyone goes work with a mobile. We want to see the information all the time. Imagine salesperson and the last days of the quarter, they want to, every minute counts. They want to see the information all the time. Use a mobile. The third one is actually a set of features and capability. We call it Sisense Labs. You are welcome to look at it in our website. But basically, it means that we are looking at the future data consumption, and we are going beyond the dashboard. So, for example, if I'm looking at a dashboard that, let's say, the information comes from Salesforce, and I want to make some actions and insert data back to Salesforce following the information that I'm looking in the dashboard, I can also do that. So it's not just one-way information, it's not just from the data source into the dashboard. You can do it both ways. You can take it from the dashboard back to the actual application. This functionality that I'm describing is the Sisense blocks, for example, but you have more. You have the narration, you have the boto, so many features that are more advanced features, more in the analytics area, which takes the data consumption beyond the dashboard. The third one, but the most important one for this session, is the usage analytics. The usage analytics is a new tool that we released in the last version, 7.3, which is basically monitor the users and the dashboard activity. You can see exactly who are the users that are using which dashboard, what are the most common features, widgets, dashboard, and so forth. According to that, you can already assume which one are probably not a good dashboard, and you can always monitor the adoption rate. Okay, so after we talked about the features and the tools and best practices, I want to share with you our success plan template, which is basically will help you to define a concrete plan in order to increase the adoption in our organization. So I will move to an example here. Can you see it? Yes, okay. Good. So what I'm sharing with you is a template of a success plan. This step will start after you are having a discussion, the same as the one I present to you, and you identify your main challenges. Let's say that you have a challenge within the area of the end user's trust and confidence, and they also have a fear from change and lacking knowledge. So if we identify the challenges, we can try and build a plan to overcome those challenges. So we will start by defining the success plan goal. What do we want to achieve? We want to increase adoption. We want to make sure a certain department will use the dashboard more. The success criteria will be a measure, will be a KPI. I want to increase the adoption rate by 20%, or I want that by the end of the quarter, I will have 80% usage of the sales department. So this is a concrete success criteria. If you can see in the template, there is a description of what you need to fill in each one of those sections. Then, it's something I didn't talk about, but I want to say a few words about it. The adoption owner, the adoption project owner, is not necessarily the BI champion for all cases. In some companies, and especially big ones, you want to give the ownership to manage this adoption, increased adoption project, actually to the people that are more close to the end users. So for example, sales operations, project managers, people that are actually working with the end users, those will be perfect people to manage the adoption project. So you need to identify those people here in this project team. Remember the key business users. We want to make sure we are identifying them as well, and the other audience. So for example, sales department, the key business user will be the VP sales and the director of EMEA sales, and we define the time frame. Okay, so let's say we decided that within a quarter we want to increase the adoption by 10%. So that will be the time frame. Now, the nice part is that we already built for you a suggestion for how to build your plans or activities. So around each of the topics that I mentioned, value focus, remember the meet requirements and providing value, documentation, training, internal marketing, ongoing routines, feedback and adjustment, for each one of them, we created for you already suggested activities from the list of all activities that I presented. You obviously can add your own activities, but just to help you to start, you can use these examples. So once you feel that, it's a very good start to start measuring the adoption and make sure you are increasing adoption. I just want to share one last slide, which will be how a success plan can look like when we talk after we prepare this plan. Let me share that very quickly. Okay, so here is a nice example. We identify the audience. You see here who is the senior management team and the operation team, how we are going to do the change, and what are the activities that we are going to perform. Under the socialize area, which is basically introduction and training, under utilize, which is basically the ongoing processes that we would like to do on a day-to-day basis, and the improve part is the feedback and the iteration that I discussed. So this is an example of a success plan. That's it.
Thank you so much, Ifat. I think that was a lot of great content and real actionable items that they can take back and implement ASAP. There's a question here about the request form. I'm guessing that you mean the survey.
No, I think they mean I have a request for new request, new KPI. Usually it's just, there are many ways to create a form, whether it is Google form or we can use any other system that we are using in the organization, even Jira if you are using that, just to create a simple form that the end users will be able to ask for features, for requirements. For example, I want to build a dashboard. That's my initial need. Who should I work with, or who should I address that to? Things like that. So think about a basic process for creating a form that will allow you to collect feedback and new requests from your end users.
Do we have one we could share?
I think we have an example. Yeah.
Okay. So to the person that asked, we'll get that to you. And someone asked about if all the documents that were shown will be in the follow-up email. And yes, they will be. We'll have the presentation.
Presentation, the success plan, and also once the BI implementation methodology will be ready, you can see that also in our website.
Any other questions? Great. Oh, no, I think that's it. So we appreciate your attendance, and we thank you, Ifat, for sharing all of these best practices, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.